Welcome to the Dear NICU Mama podcast. Our mission is to connect the past and the present NICU mom by bringing them out of isolation and into a sisterhood of women who can stand alongside each other as we heal and grow both in and out of the NICU.
Our hope is that through interviews with trauma-informed medical and maternal mental health experts and vulnerable stories from NICU mamas themselves, that you would feel connected to the Dear NICU Mama sisterhood around the world. So, whether your NICU journey was 50 years ago,
or whether you find yourself in the NICU today, we hope that this podcast reminds you that you are not alone.
Hi, friends, and welcome to the Dear NICU Mama podcast. It's your hosts, Martha and
Ashley.
Yay! The crowd goes wild. Did that sound great?
I was honestly impressed by I didn't know where you were going right away with that. I thought you were just breathing into the microphone, and then it came full circle when you were
yogic breaths, some lion breaths, like that.
I wish everybody could see your tongue when you did that face.
I took a lot away from that BFA in theater, Ashley, including tongue stretches. So everybody, welcome back to the podcast. Ashley, it is where we are. It is a little bit chill. I would say it's a little chilly.
Just a little bit. Just like -40, no big deal.
Right. It's super cash. We're all in the middle of cold and flu season. So mamas, friends, wherever you are at in that journey, please know that you are not alone. We are with you. You're going to make it through. We're all going to stand together. We will let you know when we see children's Tylenol in stock
I was
across
just going to say that.
of America. So
I was just going to say that.
Welcome. So today, Ashley, the listeners will know we will often interview experts in the fields of neonatology, maternal mental health, obstetrics, and then other times we'll get to interview mamas from around the world about their NICU journeys and talk about different topics. Today, we are having a very special roundtable episode where we have incredible members from our community here to talk about a beautiful topic, which is family planning, how we talk about growing our families after the NICU and all the different parts of that. So welcome to Kendra Locke and Sara Camarina, friends of the podcast and of our hearts forever.
Hello. I'm so excited to be back with you ladies.
Hey. I don't think we're supposed to say that anymore, but anyway, I'm glad to be back. I'm not in -40. It is a cloudy 59 degrees positive in Phoenix, Arizona. So I will just look out my lovely window and enjoy the clouds. But I'm happy to be back, guys.
We'll just live vicariously through you and your beautiful swimming pool patio backyard.
Ash, do you want to talk about the impetus for this episode and like the topic of the season, the theme of the season of family planning and growing our families?
Yes, for sure. We kind of decided on this theme of growing your family after NICU and this idea of family planning. And we did this because one of probably the most common questions that we see in our private Facebook group and on our Instagram is A, how do you know if you're ready? B, how do you do it again? And C, what if you never feel ready to do it again? And so we wanted to dedicate a whole season, and to be honest, we could probably dedicate many seasons to this topic because it's such a multi-layered conversation, and depending on your journey, this decision for your family will look different, but we wanted to have a few different conversations, both with specialists and with mamas themselves, to just talk about it because sometimes you just don't know until you hear another mom's story. And so no matter where you are in your family building journey, whether that is we've made a decision, we know what's next for our family, or you're still kind of in that limbo, we hope that these conversations really give you just a glimpse into other mamas' hearts and just bring some peace to you knowing that you are making the best decisions for your family.
Should we kick it off then by maybe going around and doing some quick introductions about each of our individual stories?
Yeah, let's do it.
Kendra, do you want to take us away?
I would love to. So if you're new here or haven't listened to an episode with my journey in Callan's NICU stay, I am a full-term NICU mama to Callan, who we call the Mighty Warrior. And he had a 6-month-long NICU stay. He was born full term. We were not expecting anything. It was a completely typical, if you will, pregnancy that just kind of got turbulent afterwards. And he was diagnosed with a chromosomal abnormality that I actually am the carrier of, which we found out about a month and a half into our NICU stay. So right there, our family building journey, how do we say that? Family planning, we'll say that. It changed dramatically in that moment. The day we found out that I was the carrier was the day that so many things changed for us. And yeah, so he came home with a lot of medical needs, and we were not expecting to grow our family by pregnancy after that. We were looking into adoption, and then I spontaneously got pregnant, and that's kind of where this journey took a spin for us, and I can share more about that later. But now we have Nora after Callan and after a miscarriage.
And they're like the cutest duo ever. It's so fun seeing them together. They're really beautiful siblings, and also wild.
Very wild.
And Callan looks 16 years old lately. I don't know what it is, but every time you post a picture and he's smiling, I'm just like, how did he get so old all of a sudden?
I know.
We're wondering the same thing. He'll be 6 in July, and 6 is weird. Like 5 is monumental, but 6 is like, okay, what is that number? I don't know.
You're getting old.
Yeah.
So true. And all I can think of is when he was just like, when we first met him, he was just like a little meatball, you know? He was so cute and so round
So
and
cute.
cherubic. I don't know what that word is.
Now
But
he's this long bean that I have
Exactly.
to try to figure out how to carry. And it's
Yeah. With great hair, a great head of hair.
Great hair. Literally Tyler's twin, too. Can we just say that? They look identical. Yeah.
Sarah, how about you?
So
Can you
fun.
share a little bit about your journey and sweet, sweet Connor?
Yeah. Similarly to Kendra, if you haven't listened to all of the old episodes, I shared a little bit about Connor before, but my son Connor was born at 23 weeks and 4 days. We spent 115 days in the NICU. No one to this day was able to give us a definitive answer as to why I went into labor early. So for my husband and I, that has kind of played a role in what our family planning journey looks like. But yeah, I mean that's the short and sweet version. Just having a micro preemie, and then what does family planning look like after that for us? So I'm excited to share.
Ash, how about you? Who are you? What's your name?
I don't remember.
Yeah.
Yes. So I am mama to Silas, who will be 4 in January. Don't know how that happens, but here we are. So wild. But Silas is my first baby, and he was born at 28 weeks, and due to preeclampsia and HELLP syndrome. And our pregnancy was relatively turbulent as well. I had a subchorionic hemorrhage early on in my pregnancy, and then we were watched really closely because they detected a heart defect quite early on. So for us, and I know we'll get into it later, we are definitely in that limbo stage. There are days when we feel very certain that we've made our family planning decision. And then there's other days where we're kind of like, maybe we should chat about something else. So if there's any moms listening who find themselves in that limbo, know that you're not alone. But that's a little bit about my story. Martha, how about you, my friend?
Well, the year was 1800. And no, I have 2 NICU kiddos. I have had 3 pregnancies, and my son JP was born at 25 weeks, and he only lived for 3 days. He would have been 7 this year, and then we had our daughter a few years later. I delivered early for both because I have a bicornate septate uterus, incompetent cervix, yada yada yada. You know the works. So I delivered those kiddos early, and so we obviously decided to grow our family +1 at one point. And I honestly, I don't know. I'm just so thirsty most days. I don't have time to, I don't remember. I don't know where we're at, but I think that's a valid way to feel. And I think it should go without saying for all of us that when we say family building, there's two parts of it. One is the aspect of getting pregnant again. And then the other idea is growing your family by means of adoption, pregnancy, surrogacy, foster, infant adoption, all of those kind of different realms. So we just want to be super clear that when we're talking about it, we know that there's so many different kind of dimensions of parenthood and being a parent to people in the world. So that's what we mean when we say family building.
So maybe we should all just share a little bit of, kind of what you envisioned your family building journey would look like prior to your pregnancy and NICU experiences. Kendra, do you want to kick us off?
I do, yeah. So Tyler and I, our faith is important to us. So before marriage, we were going through, premarital counseling, and Pastor Brad, which actually he gave us this long questionnaire form. I don't know. Did you fill out one of those? Did you ever? Yes. Mm-hmm. And then you match it and see how you do with your partner to kind of figure out where you're at. And we matched well, and it was good. But we were talking about how many kids do you want? And Tyler comes from having 3 other siblings, and I just have 1. So it was kind of funny. What are we going to put? Does he want less siblings, or, where did that end up? And we both wanted 3 or 4 kids. And that was that. We were just excited, and we were marrying young, so we had plenty of time in our eyes to grow our family. And honestly, we didn't have any experience with anyone going through a NICU stay, going through anything like Tyler and I ended up going through. So we were pretty naive to what building a family could look like. We just thought we would make some babies and grow our family. And it was definitely very hard on me once I got the diagnosis in the NICU for being the carrier, because that was not my dream of what building our family was going to look like. And it it did not involve having a very complex NICU stay and coming home with a whole team of specialists in our house, pretty much. So it immediately, thankfully, I'll share a little bit of this as we go through, but I am very blessed with being able to get pregnant easily. And that's not always the case for a lot of women, and I truly hold that close to my heart, knowing family members, everyone. So many people struggling with that. But we decided on our 1-year anniversary, okay, I think we're in a comfortable place to start trying to have kids. And we got pregnant right away. And so we were just kind of, right when we thought about it, it happened. And so we're like, this is easy. This is going to be so easy. We're going to be parents. And we had no idea what was coming for us.
Yeah. Kendra, I relate to that. I was definitely the same. And I also got pregnant first try right away. And I remember looking at Ryan and saying, I was made for this. I was made to have kids. Look how, how quickly we got pregnant, and it must have been the right position or something, because we got pregnant so fast. And then kind of that shattering of expectation when you kind of hit that first hiccup of, oh, okay, maybe this isn't as seamless or as easy for our family as we envisioned. And I definitely relate to that. We were also probably around that, wanting to have 3 kids. My husband is really close to his brothers, and I have 1 brother, and I always loved seeing the relationship that Ryan has with his brothers. Even to this day, I'm just like, wow, that's so cool. And going to Christmas and everybody together, just had that picture in my head. And once you kind of hit that first roadblock and you realize oh, these decisions are going to take a lot more thought and specialists, and medical professionals to make them than just an ovulation kit or, that kind of thing. It's hard to kind of reconcile that. So I relate to that. Sarah, how about you?
I would say for my husband Scott and I, we had a a similar idea that we would have more than one child. We also got pregnant really quickly. So again, similarly to Kendra and Ash, it was like, oh, well, we can just have a baby whenever we want another one. So that's fine. But during my pregnancy, while my pregnancy wasn't very complicated, until I spontaneously went into labor.
Until it was. Yeah.
But up until, the first 20 weeks of pregnancy, I had no problems. I was violently ill. Like, I was throwing up all the time. And I got medication to help with that. But I just remember thinking, even during the pregnancy, before all of the stuff happened with Connor, just thinking like, wow, I don't want to have to go through this first trimester again. This has been terrible. Like, this is not what I've seen on the movies and in the TV about what pregnancy is like. Like, I thought morning sickness was you like get up and you throw up and you continue about your day and you're fine. But I was nauseous all of the time and it was terrible. So that was sort of my first nugget with like, wait, how many kids, there's a difference between how many kids do we want to have in this house and how many times I want to be pregnant. So that was sort of our first, like, well, maybe after we have this child, we can talk about what it would look like to potentially foster kids or adopt. So yeah.
So I'm one of 5. And I freaking loved that. I loved having 1,000 siblings. It was a nightmare for my mom, I'm sure. But we were just like a gang, just like rolled in and out in a bus, just knocking things over, pulling each other's teeth out. Tooth is not the plural of teeth. But it was just crazy, and I really loved it. And I always wanted to be a mom. I went out to New York City when I was 18 to be an actor and to go to school for that. And everyone thought I was so insane that I was like this 18-year-old who is like so preoccupied with wanting to be a mother. But, I just thought that's what it was going to be. And we got married pretty young too. And we were game for having as many kids as we could have. But we found out pretty quickly that I had some fertility issues, which was all related to the same thing. So went through a couple of years of treatments for that, and eventually got pregnant with JP through those means. So yeah, I think the same thing. Like, you go through that process and you're like, wow, that was really hard to do, and it wasn't necessarily great. There's a lot of anxiety and like physical changes. It's very hard on your body to do for fertility treatments like that. So I didn't love it, but I was kind of at this point, like, when you're going through the fertility journey, it's like Operation Baby. Everything is like, how do we get this baby? It's like, I'm fertile for the next 4 hours, so let's get going. You know what I mean? It's all very surgical and nothing is sexy about it. It's just, so you have this kind of goal. And I think it's weird how that like overtakes the actual concern of like, oh, what happens when you actually have a child here? It's like a totally different thing. So yeah, that's kind of how I felt about it. But yeah, I suppose now too, the question that follows us up is what changes, like what changed for all of us. And I know for me, it was, we lost JP. And so then it's like, okay, can I do that again? Right. I think for so many people, if you miscarry or you have a stillbirth or you lose a baby, it doesn't even occur to you that could be a reality. Right. So when you endure it one time, you're like, do I have the capacity to endure it again? Can I do it? And so Zach and I talked about it, and we talked with our doctors, and we kind of were like, okay, well, we know we can do it. We can get pregnant, and we want to have a baby with us. So we want to try again. And so we just jumped right back into Operation Baby 2.0, Electric Boogaloo. And it was just like, that's like what took up the next couple of years. So I think we've spent the last, closing in on a decade now, trying to figure out how to get our kids here and safely. So it's not until JJ came home and we were like, this is really hard, that we were really talked about, like, what do we actually want You know, that whole idea, what do you want your Thanksgiving table to look like? What do you want your dinner table to look like? You close your eyes, what do you see? On one hand, there's the sadness because there'll always be a missing seat, right? And then on the other hand, there is, you know, and it's dangerous to get pregnant. Can I do it again? Is it safe to do it again? And then also, like, what do we want our lives to look like, you know, too? So that really has changed as well. Both sides of it have changed for us. I wonder if you guys have felt that way too about like the beginning pregnant and having more kids in your house, if it's changed how you felt about it.
Sometimes those feel like two separate decisions.
Totally.
Sometimes like the idea of getting pregnant and then the idea of like bringing another kid home and having more kids, and then not to even mention like that middle part where there's a potential NICU stay. Like it feels like there's almost three different decisions. Can I handle the emotional, you know, responsibility of being pregnant? That was the first thing my OB asked me. She said, there's a physical risk, but there's also an emotional risk. Do you think emotionally you could go through another high-risk pregnancy? So that was the first question. Then the second was, could you potentially go through another NICU stay? Knowing that he could come earlier, the statistics were in that favor. So it's like, we know what 28 weeks looks like. Are we prepared for 26, for 27, potentially 25? And then the other one of, are you prepared to go through the newborn stage again and all of those things that, you know, so it's like, it feels like there's these almost micro decisions that all end up leading to one answer, but it's like, you have to ask yourself so many questions to get to that decision.
Every time I feel like Martha, especially now with my recent part of our journey, I feel like you took so many words and feelings just right out of my mind and my heart. You have this way of making me emotional, but then laugh with these little like funny comments. And I'm like, ooh, okay, let's hold it together. Even though I know this is a safe space not to hold it together. But no, I agree with so much of what you both have just shared. It's the NICU journey. I mean, I think you probably all can agree there's things in the NICU that you kind of just glaze over. They're not the mundane times in the NICU, but they're kind of the mundane times, right? There's specialness in every day, but there's those that just don't stand out as much as some key moments in your NICU journey. And one of mine that I will never forget is the geneticist coming bedside and telling me, yeah, so just like we expected, you are the carrier. Contact us if you ever want to try to have kids again. Like, what? And I've shared this on my Facebook page, so if you're friends with me, you've heard me kind of share the story. But we were in a NICU where it was just bed after bed after isolette after isolette, and it was just, the curtains were usually open. And Ashley, did you have experience in that NICU? I don't remember if you were in that when you were in Masonic.
Yeah.
And there's just no privacy. And she didn't even ask to close the curtain, and she shared this news just right there. And it was, I don't think, like, because it was her job, I don't think she processed how this could impact a very young mother. And that will have, like, forever be a core memory in my mind, and that was the moment that everything changed for us. It wasn't necessarily, I mean, it was everything that Kellen went through, and the fact that every pregnancy I have the risk of passing that on, but it was more so just like, I am the carrier. I have the thoughts of, this is my fault. Everything Kellen went through was my fault. And can I do that to another child? Should we do that to another child? So that moment was what changed everything for us, was me finding out that I was the carrier.
Yeah.
I think for me, I think the NICU experience, everything that happened with Connor and the 115 days we were in the hospital, was definitely a big part of it. But I also think that something has happened even in the time after that, where, you know, those NICU memories start to fade a little bit, and you go to therapy and you start to heal. Something else has happened with my husband and I, and it was sort of the realization that Connor is a handful. We have specialist appointments, not a ton, but we have a pretty full plate of stuff that we are navigating with him still. And to be quite frank, Connor is kind of he's a difficult kid. Like, I feel like our whole world sort of revolves around him and his needs and what's going on with his vision, and he's having a hard time at school. And oftentimes we look at each other and we're like, how could we even add one more? Like, this child needs two parents. He takes two. So what are we going to do with, what would we do with another one? But really after the NICU and coming home and experiencing post-NICU hospitalization and all of that trauma, that was when my husband and I really were like, we had this vision of two kids maybe. One kid isn't going to be that different. It does change the dynamic of our household and what we thought our dinner table would look like. But in all of that time since, I have found a lot of comfort in and routine, really, with it just being the three of us. And I am so happy and will scream it from the rooftops that women shouldn't feel pressured to have another child, to give their first child a sibling. Because we need to look out for mom's mental health too. And I was really transparent in my episode with Connor, telling Connor's story, but I had a lot of mental health struggles coming home after the NICU, and I think that also played a big role in, do I have the mental capacity to not the NICU stuff aside, but to parent another child? And I think after everything that we had been through, it was sort of a no-brainer for us to make the decision to say that Connor's gonna be our one and only.
Yeah. I think you bring up a good point too of what can feel expected of us. And I'd wonder if we could just, I know this isn't on our questions, but chat a little bit of when you guys were in maybe some of those beginning stages of making these decisions about your family building journey, what you felt like was an expectation versus what your hearts really desired, and how you kind of were able to differentiate the two and really begin to make decisions that honored your family and not what others expected of you, or maybe even like a younger version expected of you, I think sometimes it's hard to reconcile with wanting to be the version of yourself that your younger version of you really wanted to be, and then getting to that stage and realizing that you're just a different version of yourself than maybe you pictured. So for you guys, how did you differentiate between expectation versus what your heart really wanted or needed?
That's good and tough.
Yeah.
Well, for us, so kind of a little deep dive into how we got Nora after Callan. We were thinking about adopting, and honestly, we didn't really share much of that story or those decisions or thoughts with our family. I think our families were just seeing every complexity that we were going through with Callan, that there was never an expectation from them. They never questioned, what, and I think that's mostly where it comes from, right? I would have discussions with friends about where I was feeling. I had to really grow and grieve what I felt like I was promising to Tyler when we got married. Like, that was what you're talking about, Ashley. Like, those younger expectations was, well, in my head, I'm like, Tyler married me because he thought I was going to be able to give him this big family. And it was something that I really struggled with and had to just heal from and grow in. And I would voice those things to really close friends, but I didn't talk too much about that with my family. And just because I didn't feel like sharing that with them, as simple as that. It just didn't ever come up. where it would come up with my friends that were growing their own families and had more simple versions going on their end. So then we ended up spontaneously getting pregnant. Now, obviously, we know how to get pregnant. We know how that happens. But it theoretically shouldn't have happened, and we ended up getting pregnant. And I will tell you, those first few hours after taking that test, we were terrified. We were crying. We were grieving. We did not know what we were going to do. And Tyler looks at me, he's like, we have a half an hour to get this out of our systems, and then we're going to be joyful about this child. And so then we were excited to be pregnant. We didn't know what that looked like, but we were like, okay, this is it. And then we lost that baby. And on the way home from the appointment, finding out that baby did not have a heartbeat, Tyler looks at me and goes, I don't think I want to adopt anymore. I'm like, okay, whoa, hold up. Like, we just found out that we lost this baby, and now you're telling me you don't want to grow our family at all? Like, you don't want to adopt? This is a lot of triggering things to talk about after we just found out 45 minutes ago. And he looked at me, he's like, Kendra, no, I think we're supposed to try again. And that was wild. I'm like, okay, let's play this conversation for another day, because I still haven't even passed this baby. But then we did go on and decide to try again. So after telling Tyler, let's not talk about this, let's table this for today, that kind of led into how we decided to continue to grow our family and what came after that.
What about you, Sarah?
I feel like before we initially got pregnant with Connor, I think, and when we think about like expectations, right, I would say that the elephant in the room is like, it's typically coming from family. Of course you have these like inner, desires and like expectations of yourself and what you think that you and your body can handle before you have your first child. But I think that there are a lot of external pressures too, and in society what we think, the nuclear family should look like. And you very rarely see, a mom and a dad with one child. That was not something that I saw growing up, hardly ever. Almost everyone I've ever been friends with and I've ever known has had siblings. So this journey for us, deciding to be one and done, and then communicating that to other people and feeling like I had to be really loud about it because I hated getting the question, well, when are you guys going to have another baby? Well, Connor's fine. Look at him now. He's fine. He's 4. He's healthy. He's fine. And I think as a society, we're starting to evolve and recognize that those types of questions are not appropriate, especially to strangers. But when thinking about the expectations that our family had for us having a larger family, Scott ended up getting a vasectomy at the end of 2020 because we were so sure that we did not want to have another biological baby. And I think that took our family by surprise. But it was something that we felt that, we know what happens in our house, and we knew that having another child, even thinking about Connor's NICU experience, we just knew that wasn't going to happen. So circling back to the question of navigating expectations, I think it is really uncomfortable and it's really hard, especially when you feel like you're going to disappoint people. I had a hard time even like telling my mom because I felt like I wanted to give her all of these grandbabies, because you always hear that, being a grandma is the best and you just want to give them all of the grandbabies. And I did have this weird feeling that I was letting my family down in that way. But I think in a healthy relationship where you can communicate with your parents about why you're deciding to just have one child, I was very thankful that I didn't really get any pushback from anybody. The pushback that I really get comes from people that I don't know very well, which is so bizarre.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah, the internet is weird. And filled with like wonderful people who are there to like build community, and like us, right? We live around the country and we became dear friends, but also very random, weird feedback from the world. We did an awesome episode with Jess from the One and Done podcast, Only You One and Done. So that's definitely worth a listen for those who haven't heard it. But yeah, I think that for me, honestly, the expectations were all in my brain. Like they're all me. Mm-hmm. And like I think a lot of people who go through the NICU and deliver preterm or have a medical crisis or are genetic carriers for a chromosomal abnormality, right? There's an inherent feeling of intense shame, because it's like you mentioned, Ash, like there's this weird kind of subliminal messaging that like motherhood is inherently easy, or it's like our body should know how to do this, right? Should be able to do this. And still to this day, we'll send each other things we find online of people reiterating that message. Like, this should be the easiest thing. You should be able to give birth in the wild with birds circling you. You know what I mean? And that we just,
your body was made for this.
Right. And we just know that's not the case. And so because those messages exist out there, I think that's for where it comes from me. It's this shame of like, okay, one, my body can't do it. Why? Because I was born with like a weird shaped uterus. Cool beans. Great stuff happening here. But then two, it's like the mental capacity to be able to do it. And so for me, there's like that shame and the expectation of I didn't love newborn life because it was incredibly traumatic, right? I didn't love the NICU stay. I don't know if people like loved what happened to them, but because I felt like because I couldn't imagine tolerating doing it again, that there was something wrong with me. Why wouldn't you want to do anything for your babies, right? So I think that's what it is. And the best answer for that is seeing a therapist. So I recommend that 10 out of 10. That makes sense.
Are you looking for a creative way to honor your favorite NICU family while also supporting the mission of Dear NICU Mama? Then we've got you covered.
This Valentine's season, you can participate in our virtual Valentine's Day telegrams. For just $25 per telegram, you can either send a voice memo or something in writing, and it can be read by our hosts of the Dear NICU Mama podcast to honor your favorite NICU mama and NICU families.
With each purchase of a Dear NICU Mama telegram, not only are you donating to the mission and movement of Dear NICU Mama, but you will also receive a virtual Valentine's that you can send to your favorite NICU family that you are honoring. So on top of having a spot on the Dear NICU Mama podcast to honor your family, you'll also receive a Valentine's to make sure that they feel seen and heard this Valentine's Day.
After your submission, make sure to tune in to the Dear NICU Mama podcast for a special Valentine's Day episode where we'll be featuring these Valentine's Day telegrams on February 14th.
For more information on how to purchase and send a Dear NICU Mama Valentine's Day telegram, head to the link in our bio or dearnicumama.com/telegram.
You kind of have to, which is where therapy comes in, and get those tools to really insulate yourself from all opinions when you're making these decisions, because there are so many opinions. Mm-hmm. Even listening to this podcast, we all probably have our own opinions based on our own journeys. And at the end of the day, it requires you and your partner alone looking at your family, making the best decisions for your family. And that takes a lot of work because we want to make people happy and we want us to be happy and we don't want to make the wrong decision, right? Like there's always this like, well, what if this is the right decision or that's the right decision? And so I think no matter what, it requires a certain level of like hibernation and insulation from other people's ideas of what your family should look like, which is really difficult. So maybe then after that vein, how did you guys know that you were ready or not ready to start getting pregnant again or building your family? Kendra, do you want to go first?
Yeah. So after it took my body quite a few weeks to, you ladies know, you were right there with me, encouraging me, loving me, and checking in. It took my body quite a few weeks to actually pass baby. And during that time, I was just in such this limbo moment of Tyler being, and me actually feeling peace with trying again and having this excitement, but I was still holding on to this current pregnancy. And that was just a weird time, honestly. I don't know how to describe it. I felt really just like stuck. I'm like, why is my body
And it wasn't it also like right in the height of COVID too, right?
in the
That
height
was
of
the other
COVID.
element of it.
Yes. So I went in for the initial appointment and found out that baby didn't have a heartbeat, and then the rest of it was virtual. So they were checking in on me because I was like, no, I don't. I just want to see if my body will pass it instead of scheduling a D&C. And then they would check in like a week later with me, and she's like, would you like me to send, the pills? And I was like, no, I don't think so. Like, I still feel comfortable. And they're like, okay, we'll give you 2 more weeks, because at that point in time, if I hadn't passed it, then baby would have been inside of me for a risky amount of time. So right there already, it was complicating everything, right? I was almost losing trust in my body, because why wasn't it doing what it was supposed to be doing? And I think we can all relate to that in some capacity, of like losing that trust of your body.
Right.
But in that same amount of time, there was a part of Tyler and I that we felt peace and we felt excitement to do something that we never thought we were going to do again. So we came to just a peace in saying, because Tyler asked me, as we were pulling in the driveway on the day that we found out we lost the baby, he said, did it matter to you? Did it matter to you if this baby had Callan's genetic condition? And I was like, no, it didn't. I love that baby. I love this baby so much. And it was in that moment that I think it sat in that as hard as it could be, as it would be to do it again, I was loving that baby. I was excited for that baby. So that kind of stuck with us, and that's what kind of carried us through to trying again. But also, so much has changed since then. Up until that point of that pregnancy, Callan, he had a very crazy first year of life, but then he was doing good. He was stable. He was gaining just new skills, and he was losing medical things, and he was relatively healthy and stable. So then we got pregnant again, and that was a really, really challenging pregnancy mentally for me. We found out at 11 weeks that we were having a girl, so that should have put me at ease, right? Like, this baby won't have the genetic conditions or the genetic condition, hypothetically, express the genetic condition that Callan has. And this should be a typical pregnancy, a typical delivery, all those air quotations that you can put in there. And why was I so stressed out? Why was I so anxious? Why did everything terrify me? Why did I need to buy a fetal Doppler to check at home to make sure she was still okay? I did not expect to be so anxious during that pregnancy. And I think it's because we wanted this so bad. We wanted this pregnancy and a different outcome, and not that we would change anything about Callan, but we would love to change that he didn't have to go through all of that, and that we didn't have to go through all of that. I think that's okay for us to say.
Of course, yeah.
And so we got through it. I had to start therapy during her pregnancy, because it was that hard on my mind. I had super intrusive thoughts, and I don't know what I would have done if I did not go through therapy, to be honest. it would have been a very, very hard pregnancy. It was hard emotionally, mentally without that, so I couldn't imagine it. So if you decide to go through pregnancy after a NICU journey or loss, don't feel bad if you have these anxious or intrusive thoughts. I think it happens to so many people, and don't be afraid to reach out for help, because I felt like I was a little bit ashamed to have to reach out. I thought that I was really great in my healing journey. I thought I was healed. Little did we know, about a year later, we would do Healing is Lifelong, and here we are, still healing. Then, fast forward, Nora, she will be 2 in February, and this last summer, I once again spontaneously got pregnant when I hypothetically shouldn't have. And this time, things were so different. This past year of Callan's life was so turbulent. So many hospitalizations, so many ER visits, just so many different things have come up in his life. Plus, a very fiery little toddler. Sarah, when you were saying things like, I don't, like, these kids, Callan takes probably like 5 adults sometimes to really, there's just a lot of stuff that I don't share about his journey, but he definitely has some really hard days, some really hard moments. And I was terrified. How am I going to be a good mom to another child? This was a dream at one point, but is that okay if this dream changes? And will I still be fulfilled if I want that? If that is no longer the outcome of this dream that we had before marriage or walking into marriage. Every step of that pregnancy, I was praying for peace. I was praying for help, because I'm like, I literally don't know how I can handle another child. I was terrified. I was very terrified. And then we found out that this baby did not have a heartbeat as well at 9 weeks. I should have been 9 weeks. And it was clear that this baby had a genetic abnormality. And there was some aspect about that was relieving. And there were some aspects that made the grieving process really hard, because then you almost envision another little Callan, because with his genetic condition, there are a lot of similarities in all of the boys, because the boys are the ones that express it. So it's almost like I can envision this baby where I didn't have those thoughts with our first miscarriage. So there were some parts of this last miscarriage that were really, really hard in that aspect. And because I was so terrified that entire, 2 months, whatever it was, my OB, Tyler, was very adamant, like, I'm getting a vasectomy. I'm getting it done. We cannot do this again. I don't want to risk this again. And I was kind of teetering back and forth, like, are we sure? But with all the peace that I felt sitting with my OB, and she said to me, she's like, Kendra, I think you know your answer if you were this terrified of being pregnant again. And she's a very bold OB. If I didn't have such a connection with her over the past 5.5 years, I would have been like, who are you to say that? But at the same time, I felt a lot of truth in that. And so Tyler has an appointment in January for a consultation for a vasectomy, which most days I would say like 9 out of 10 days I'm really okay with that. But there are those days where I do question, like, are we sure? But kind of jumping back to that question of expectations. During this pregnancy, or this last pregnancy, I felt a lot of shame and judgment in my head, mostly, of what our family's going to think. Like, they see how hard it is for us right now. What are they going to think? They're going to think we're careless, we're reckless. Like, what are we doing? Why would we allow this? And most of that was in my head. But I was very nervous to share with my family. And something that sticks out to me that I, just one of those thoughts is my dad saying, well, you can't forget about my little man. Just don't ever forget about my little man. And he's talking about Callan. And so much of it was, he was being so honest because he has just this wonderful heart that's so pure for Callan. But in some aspects, it hit really hard because that was my fear after, or with Nora, was, will he get less of me and less of Tyler? Because he deserves everything for us to try to push him forward and help him exceed and grow. And so I did have those fears this time around of how are you going to do this? How will he still grow and develop if we have another child? But also after having Nora, I realized that your love and capacity has no bounds. It grows and multiplies, and I couldn't fathom it before Nora, but having so much love for both of them, it just it makes me explode. I'm so proud, and I'm so thankful. It wasn't easy, but I'm very thankful. Sorry, that was really long. There's a lot of parts to this.
No,
There are.
so good.
And thank you for sharing about the upcoming appointment that Tyler has, the big V. It is a big choice to make. And I think one thing that we haven't all said aloud is we are all very young.
Yeah.
We're all really young. Yes. And even if you are certain in your decision and you're like, this is 100% right, I think there's a little bit of grief of this just kind of sucks that we're real young and super fertile people who are having to make choices that maybe feels premature for where other people are.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, there is a weird sense of I'm not, the word is escaping me, but finality of it, where it's once you have a medical procedure, it's like when women get their tubes tied or when men get a vasectomy, it does feel so permanent. And there is a little bit of grief. I mean, even for Scott and I, maybe not my husband, but he's different. But
let's call him in. Scott, what do you think?
No, he has screamed it from the rooftop that he thinks that men that don't want any more children should just get a vasectomy because being on birth control is so, it's hard. So if you really don't want to have children, it usually falls on the women to what are you going to do to not get pregnant? And I think after everything with the NICU, I think Scott felt a little bit of ownership after all of that. And no, and being transparent, I want to have a healthy, normal sex life and not be scared to have a baby. Right. Yes. We don't know if it's safe for me. And, anyway, so all of those things considered, I think that there is definitely some grief about having to make a decision like that. But Kendra, I wanted to add to a little bit what you said about your heart, knowing no bounds for loving a baby, because I sort of had that epiphany too, where I found myself kind of daydreaming about what it would have been like for Connor to have a sibling, and what a cool brother he would be, and all of those things, they feel really heavy. And one of the things that I just had an epiphany about, right after COVID, in my hunt of trying to get out of the house, because being quarantined for so long, it was I need to find something that fills my heart and gets my body moving. I decided to find a club softball team, and I have now, it's already been a year, you guys, can you believe? I have been an assistant coach for a girls fast pitch softball team, and that feels like I just got 14 more children.
I'm crying hearing you talk about this, Sarah.
I love those girls like they are my biological children. And I think that my experience with that has been so profound, because I think that I think family is what you make it. I think that when we think about growing our family and our heart knowing no bounds, I think that it's hard when you decide to do the non-traditional route of growing your family. But I feel like I've hit the jackpot in a way of just finding another community to be a part of. And it is very flattering when I hear that, the feeling is mutual. For Christmas, the girls, the parents wrote me this beautiful card, and everyone was sending me all these nice texts saying how great it has been for me to be a mentor for their children. And I don't know, I have found that has definitely filled my heart in a way that feels authentic to me without the burdens of motherhood, I guess. I don't know. But I wanted to share that because I really felt that same sentiment, Kendra, with is it possible for your heart to be, spread amongst multiple children? And I think if you choose to not have biological children and you choose to find something else that fills your heart, that's definitely possible too.
Yes. Oh. I'm so glad you shared that, Sarah. I always cry when you talk about your softball girls.
I just love it so much.
It's also just such a good reminder that mothering can look different in so many ways. Whether you're mothering your own biological baby or foster baby or adoptive baby, that there are so many ways to mother, and we can never have enough mothers, right?
It's so true. It really does take a village, and it does. It really does. And then, I know we have a lot of moms in the NICU community that were former teachers, and I think about that a lot too. And for the women that have stepped away from teaching, and what a big commitment that is. We all can kind of balk and say oh, teaching was really hard, but I think once you've had that classroom experience, you miss the kids, you miss the connection. It feels good to make a difference. And yeah, all that to say is that mothering is it takes a village. I think everyone should have so many moms. The world would be a better place with many more moms.
Yes.
Ash, is it fair to ask you about where you're at, where you're feeling about everything today, how you guys are navigating the discussions? It seems a little unfair, actually, because it's in the middle of an insane season for you, too.
No.
Do you know what I mean? It's kind of crazy.
No, it's not unfair. I think in sharing it, I hope that there's others who can maybe hear their story reflected as well, of that it ebbs and flows. And I think too, when you're making this decision, like you said, Martha, so young, and you're in a world of probabilities, right? Once you become a NICU mom, your world is probabilities, statistics, numbers, percentages. There's no certains. So you can meet with specialist after specialist, and there's no this is exactly how your story will unfold. If you get pregnant on this day, you will deliver on this day, and you'll be, there's no map. And so in turn, there's no closure. And I think for me and my husband, it's being okay without the closure, and giving ourselves permission to kind of sit in that messy middle of no matter the decision that we make, we may not ever feel that I had my 4 kids, I know I'm done, or I had my, this happened and now I know. There may not ever be that closure, but that doesn't make it any less sacred, or that decision any less sacred. I shared this on Jess's interview that we did with her, and I know we're going to share that replay. But one way that we grew our family over the past couple of years was we got a huge dog. I was like, well, if we can't give Silas a sibling, let's give him a fur sibling. And so out of like kind of some cool turn of events, we ended up getting a Bernese Mountain Dog puppy, which we love dearly. But in my head, I idolized what this relationship would look like and what having a puppy would look like.
And
for
it's
those
gone
first couple
exactly
weeks,
how you thought.
exactly how I thought. But those first couple weeks, I felt the glory of getting a new puppy and growing our family. And then reality set in that she's not a baby. She's not a human. She's not a, quote, real sibling. And I was so disappointed because I thought that a dog could fill that place in my heart that only a baby or another sibling could. And I like to write, and so I remember writing something that said, what if things are so sacred they're just meant to be held? And so now I'm still in this daily practice of holding grief, of holding that longing, of holding that desire, and just holding it and not trying to figure it out, not trying to fill it, not trying to, have this huge void or distraction or whatever, but just holding it for what it is. It's a desire. It's a longing. And there are some days where we feel very certain that we're ready to be done. There's other days I've always had a really big heart for adoption or foster care. There's days where we talk about that. But for me, like Sara mentioned, getting to serve these NICU moms has felt in a way like mothering. Like I don't call myself, you guys, like my mom, but
I call you my mom.
But I mean,
you're my
having
mom.
the ability, having the ability and space to nurture this community is such a gift to me. And I'm so grateful that I'm able to be a mom to Silas and then be a fellow sister to this community and to pour creativity and passion into this community, because you guys are also special to me. And so whether mothering's the word, maybe nurturing is a different word, of just like having the opportunity and the time and space to be able to pour into this other part of my heart that I get to nurture. Mm-hmm. It feels like such a gift. And so I know that was kind of long-winded, but
no, it's beautiful.
But that's and now to kind of circle back, I no longer, like, for the longest time I wasn't enjoying Opal because I was so disappointed. That's my dog's name. I wasn't enjoying Opal because I had really high expectations of her, and she was failing. She wasn't filling that void like I expected her to. And now that I've been able to recognize that, I enjoy her so much more as this beautiful addition to our family that doesn't have to fill anything. We just get to enjoy her. Mm-hmm. And her and Silas are super close. Like, they are like best friends. So the other day, I was bringing him to daycare, and he's like, we have to bring Opal. She's my best friend. And so it's like, now that I've been able to recognize the gift that she is, she no longer disappoints me because she's not trying to fit a place in my heart that she just wasn't made to fill. Yeah. And so, again, therapy helped me recognize that. But yeah. So
can I just say, I love that you were having these like intellectual, like deeply emotional thoughts and discernments about Sweet Opal, and meanwhile she was like, can I have peanut butter? Like, she had no idea this was going on.
Yeah, right.
She had no idea.
Or she's digging herself in the snow. She's like, what? I am supposed to come inside?
She's like, oh, did you guys just leave these pavers out here? I just dug up your whole patio. Is that bad?
Yep. It's so true. Martha, how about you, my friend?
Well, yeah, I have no idea.
That's okay.
Yeah, I think that my husband is very much, he would like to just be done because it's too much. And I think one other aspect of this is like the financial burden of it all. Yes. We have been set back so much because of, starting back from JP and like a loss of income and having to not be able to work and all this stuff. So it's like this important thing, I think, to acknowledge that there is, being able to get pregnant is a privilege. Being able to afford more children, be able to afford childcare, like in America in 2022 is, it's all part of it as well. And so that part of it makes me deeply sad. But I don't know, I think, I know it'd be super dangerous, but there's like this other part of my brain that's like, how dangerous? We'll see. Yeah. You know what I mean? And then the doctors and Zach are like, very dangerous. Please stop talking about it. And then, then your kids get older and, if you have a kid who communicates with you, they start maybe asking questions about it. I was just sharing, I texted with Ashley this morning. JJ's been asking a lot about why we can't have another baby in the house. She'll be like, the baby can live in my room. I'll share my toys with the baby. She said this morning, I don't know, I won't know what the baby needs if the baby's crying, but if you tell me, I'll get the baby whatever the baby needs. And I was like, first of all, she's just a huge capacity for love. But I
wonder where she gets that from.
And which is so beautiful. But I get sad. And I'm also, an Enneagram 2. So I'm immediately like, well, maybe I'll just have a baby because she said she wanted it today. And that's not, Zach is like, that's also not good. We should not go by the whims of a 4-year-old for this.
The baby will come home and say, can you put her back now? We're done here.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. That would not be good. It's like, he's like, this is the same level as her wanting dinner on the blue plate and not the purple plate. Like, let's just not. So, I don't know. I have no idea. And it changes all the time because who knows? I don't think we're quite at the big vasectomy talk yet. We're just not there for some reason. Because also the other thing is life is just so busy. Like, I keep forgetting about it, You keep, it's just kind of this thing that's in the back of your mind all the time. I'll echo what Ashley did too, which is that about having this other thing, this other vocation of life. We talk all the time about DNM, Dear NICU Mama, being one of our children, right? Because it takes a little, just as much time some weeks, and also grows and ebbs and flows. And I think that I forget that that's also incredibly this really important part of my life. And it was JP's birthday 2 days ago, and he will always not be at the table, right? There's always an emptiness that we will feel forever because he's not there. I mean, 7 years is a long time to be without him, but there'll be a time when it'll be 30 years without him, right? And 50 years. How old will I be? I'll be 1,000 years old. But it's very challenging to reconcile this with this family building thing because of JP's life and because of his death. I sent a message to Ashley on Instagram, because I saw her and it resonated with me. And because of that, I have dear friends in Phoenix, Arizona and the United Kingdom. And there's women who, are now dear friends, that we're not even maybe as close with, but they're like bonded for life because of this thing. And like, we're talking about hundreds and thousands of people. And so it's not the same. It's tomatoes, it's potatoes. It's tomatoes and potatoes. It's potatoes and like NASCAR driving. They're not the same at all, but it's, it's something, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry. I didn't mean to be depressing.
No, that's not depressing.
I remember.
Yeah, sorry. You go, Ash.
Oh. Well, I just remember when Silas turned 1, I texted Martha and Kendra and I just said, I wouldn't choose to go through it again. It wasn't a fun thing to go through. Obviously, I'm grateful because it brought me my son. But I said, I grieve thinking about what my life would look like not knowing this community and not knowing you both. And his story and our journey led me to all of you. And I will forever be grateful for that. And you guys are my family. Like Sara said, you get to define what family is, and I hope that your kids are my son's family, that one day we all get to be in the same room, and when I talk to you guys on the phone, Silas demands the phone because he wants to talk to your kids. And I'm just so grateful that there's this level of vulnerability that we're doing this deep inner work so that our kids don't have to do it. And that they'll get to reap the benefits of this inner healing work and of these relationships that we're building together and the family that we're creating with each other. And when I think of my table, I think of all of you guys at my table too. I think about sharing holidays with you guys and our kids going on trips and, because family is what you make it. So
look at that full circle. Look at that reciprocal narrative. You did such a nice job there, Ash.
so true, though. Which you, Ashley and Martha, both know her, but I have a close friend through our NICU journey, and she's going through some health things with herself, and she's a single mom, and she was sharing that she was just having some really hard thoughts, and what would happen if something were to happen to her, and her son doesn't have a dad in the picture, and the only thing I can picture and tell her is that he has us, he has all of us, like, he's our kid too, as though, and I tell her also, that doesn't make any of this less scary, or your tears not valid and your words not valid, but, like, also, he's our kid, he's my kid, I think of him as my own, and he wouldn't ever feel, left alone, because we would all surround him, and I think that's what happens when this community comes together.
Yes. No, it's so true. Oh, you guys, I just love all of you, and I love this community, and I love all of your kids, and thank you guys all for just your vulnerability and for sharing just really tender parts of your heart. And I hope that to all of the moms listening today, that you just feel empowered to make the right decisions for your family. And that also, it's okay if you haven't made that final decision. It's okay if you're in that messy middle, or even that mundane middle where, sometimes you don't even have capacity to process this decision until you're not in crisis. And some of you guys are still in crisis right now, or you're still in the midst of your journey. And there's going to be a lot of opinions out there of what you should, shouldn't, can't, can do. But know that we believe that you're making the best decisions and that you are capable to make the best decisions. And so no matter how, if, when you decide to grow your family, whether that's by getting a big Bernese Mountain Dog or by pregnancy, adoption, or all of the above, we honor you today, and we honor your beautiful family, and you have a seat at our table. So we love you guys. We love this community, and we can't wait to catch back with you guys next week. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of the Dear NICU Mama podcast.
If you loved this episode, we'd be so grateful for a review on any of the podcast platforms.
And we'd love to continue connecting with you via our social media pages or a private Facebook group. And ultimately, NICU Mama, welcome to the sisterhood.